For nearly 2 decades, been at vice president leadership levels in many great organizations across the United States, a consultant and a teacher to thousands of individuals and world-leading companies with his father, Norton. He is, of course, none other than our founder and chairman of ASEA. Please put your hands together for Mr. Tyler Norton.
Thanks, Stevie. Thank you so much.
Wow. It's like 9 a.m. here, but it's 2 in the afternoon, 2:30. It's good to be with you guys. Have you had a good day? Yeah. Have you? It's great. It's absolutely terrific. Yeah, I lost the tie, yeah. I went Gold Coast on you. Thanks for the water there. Well, it's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you, sir. It's just a pleasure to be with you. So many of you have come up and shared personal stories and just a real heartfelt hello. And I just went, frankly, to bed last night with a full heart. My heart was just so full. You guys are amazing. I am a guest at this event. This is a field-led event, as it should be. And so I'm thankful, and I think you owe a round of applause to your Australian Diamonds and to Trish and others that came from the States. Someone just leaned over to me in the side here and said, we need to stop giving Justin ASEA. He's running around here like a madman, doing backflips. Where is he? I don't know if he's in the back somewhere. Like, there he is against the wall doing a Trish. Good to have you. Well, it's a treat to be able to share some thoughts and ideas with you. I feel the reason my heart's full, and it is still here on the stage, is so many of you have come and shared very personal stories. It's sometimes hard for me to not so much believe. It's not hard for me to believe, but it's hard for me to process. It's humbling at a level that's really difficult for me to describe. I don't really feel like you should be thanking me or my dad. If I could say anything at all, in fact, let's see, is it Jill and Peter? Where are Jill and Peter? Garbett? And is it Marika that's next to them? Could you three stand? I just want you to stand for just a minute. Before you give them a round of applause, this is an example of what I'm feeling. So Jill Garbett comes up to me here. I just connected my computer. Most of you were out of the room, still enjoying lunch. And she said, I just want to thank you for what this has done for my husband, Peter, who's standing next. Peter, I want you to raise your arms above your head. Could you do that 2 years ago? No. Had you been to 3 specialists trying to help you figure out what the problem was? And the real person to be thanked, the real miracle for me, is standing next to Peter. Her name is Marika. Because Marika, who does the hair for Jill, right? I hope you do the hair for Peter too, by the way. He could use a little help with his hair, just kidding. But here's Marika. Jill sitting with Marika, getting her hair done. And Jill telling me that her husband would sit in his home and excuse me, she would see tears coming down his cheeks because of the pain and difficulty that he was having. And she said before Peter was in the room, he was outside getting warmed up. I have a problem. I'm trying to cool down. You're trying to warm up. But it was so sweet, so incredibly tender and sweet and sincere to hear Jill talk about her love for Peter and how thankful she was that he was doing better. So I said, I want to meet him. Where is he? And she says, well, he's outside. I said, well, let's go find him. So we walked out together, and Marika was there with us, and then in comes Peter. And he gives me a big hug and describes his situation. But you know the miracle for me? It's Marika. Here's Marika, who's willing, who feels compassion. We talked yesterday about compound words. The last week of Christ's life is called the Passion of Christ. And if you understand what that word means, you might think, why do they call it the Passion of Christ, right? And by the way, I'm not in any way trying to promote one religion over another. I'm just telling you the reality. If you see the last week of his life in a film, Mel Gibson's film, it's called the Passion of Christ. Does anyone know the derivative of that word? We think about passion all the time, right? I'm going to talk about passion of a different kind today. You guys okay still standing? Yeah, that's good. You had some ASEA, so you're okay? Stay up for a minute. You deserve it. The passion stands for the suffering. That's why the last week of Christ's life is called the Passion of Christ. It's the suffering. So what does the prefix COM mean? You know what it is in Spanish, right? Con is with, together. So compassion is suffering with someone. That's what compassion means. It means you're willing to suffer with someone. And for me, Marika, when you're doing Jill's hair and she's describing her concern for her sweet husband, Peter, you have compassion, right? And you say, Jill, you need to try this. So this is an incredible business opportunity. But can you imagine what I'm processing when I meet these lovely people and they're telling me this story, right? And this is just one of several I've had over the last few days. Would you join me in giving both Marika a round of applause for her compassion and for those two people? Now, if you'll just remain standing for the rest of the meeting, that'd be great. Just teasing. So it's hard for me to describe the humility that I feel when I have an experience like that. It's as real as this thing in my hand, right? It's just real for me. Real people, real couples, husbands and wives, and marvelous people willing to open their mouth. It's just a miracle to me. So thank you for that. I want to talk to you. I've spent many, many years helping people see themselves on You Are Here maps. I'm a diagnostics guy. I like to know cause and effect. I like to think through where does success come from and how do you help others have success. It's an interesting business, right? The second you get in for yourself with any intention to do it, you're immediately in this role where you're supposed to mentor other people and you're still trying to figure it out yourself, right? You get in, you want to help other people succeed, and yet you're still yearning for the help you need. And so I want to show you a little map that I've used for many years. It helps me to think about where I am. It's a bit of maybe a phase 2 or a part 2 to some of the things we talked about yesterday. I like to think of it as a very simple success map. And I want to walk you through this today and have you kind of place yourself in it. And then I want you to think about not only yourself, but other people that you're trying to help, okay? So for me, it all starts where I discussed yesterday. I think there needs to be clarity in both what and why. Are you able to read that in the back? Is that too small? Can you see it okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can read it and see it. Okay, good. So I like to think of this as yesterday talking about desire, the notion of what do you want to create. And I like to really understand what do you want and why do you want it. We talk a lot about find your why, start with why. Simon Sinek's book has gotten a lot of attention. And so this doesn't have to be a terribly difficult thing or a complex thing, but I think if you're going to bring someone into this, it helps you to understand what they want and why they want it. And when I find someone that's struggling in the business, right, I typically go back and say, what is it you're trying to accomplish and why? And if you can find that why and connect with it, that's the starting point. In addition to clarity, there's one other piece that I think is absolutely pivotal, and that is conviction. And I like to break conviction down into a few different things. These aren't all the things you should have conviction in. But I find that if someone doesn't have conviction in these 3 areas, even if they have clarity on what and why, something falters. I mentioned my friend that mentored me and sent me these cassette tapes yesterday. His name was Godfrey Smith. Godfrey Smith taught me a saying that I've said in ASEA many years. He said, Tyler, remember, conviction sells, and emotions buy. And logic pays auto ship. But if you flip that and you try to say logic sells, if you try to logically sell with people, you're probably going to lose. It's far more compelling for someone like Marika to say, look, I know this works, and speak from a place of conviction and share it with another, and have the response be an emotional response that says, that's what I'll buy. But if you get in the game of logic selling, you're in trouble. Because you'll lose. Somebody's going to counterpoint you, somebody's going to ask you a question you're not ready to answer. And so I try to go the opposite direction. If you notice, I don't spend a lot of time from the stage talking a ton about science, if you've noticed. I don't really need that. I know something works, and I look at you and I say, this works. It works, and you need to try it. And you're here for a reason, and you're here to try it. If I can spend time with Jill and Peter and Marika and hear the story from them, each time that happens for me, it's layering conviction for me. Now, I have the benefit of having been in Mexico, Copenhagen, brief stint in Munich, New York, Dallas, and now here in Australia, probably in the last 5 to 6 weeks. I spend a lot of time on planes, I talk to a lot of people, and I have a lot of experiences like Jill and Peter. People that come up and tell me that. So I have this deep well of abiding conviction. And when you campaign from a place of deep conviction, there's never an argument, it's never up for debate, and you're never on trial. And I'm going to teach you about that. Once you're speaking from a place of truth and conviction, it always triggers an emotional response. Because people can sense and feel when truth is being spoken and when belief is the vehicle. So when you believe something, remember, you're not on trial. And I'm going to teach you how to dislocate yourself emotionally from the response, which only increases the emotional action to buy. The more you emotionally dislocate yourself from anyone's choice, the greater the probability they'll have an emotional response to buy. And I'll teach you how that works here today. What about product? So if you've got belief in the product, I'll tell you the deepest issue that keeps people from reaching success is belief in themselves. It's ridiculous to me. Ridiculous in a bigger sense than funny. It's not funny to me, it's insane to me. Each of us born from the same place, right? And I mentioned this a little bit yesterday. Some teacher somewhere, even maybe your parents, your grandparents, an aunt or an uncle, somebody tells you, you can't do this, or you're not smart, right? Or you can't. And what's amazing to me is we spend all these years reprogramming the hard drives on our heart and mind about what we can be, what we can do. We look for people willing to reflect that for us. We look for someone willing to help us. And I want to tell you that when Trish was up here yesterday and she's saying, change your life. When Trish is up here saying endorphins play a role in helping you overcome doubt and fear, and that exercise creates endorphins, and when endorphins are stacked with affirmations, speaking your truth and your belief and what you want to have happen, that over time, which is the tricky thing for most of you in the room, over time, it starts to converge, it starts to actually occur, it starts to happen. Boy, I wish I could meet with each one of you for a few minutes and just visit. Pull out a blank white piece of paper and draw some circles and pictures together, not comp plan, just you. Like, what do you believe in? What are your fears? What are your doubts? Clarifying what you want, and then really going to a place that says, I'm going to go to bedrock. I had dinner in Frankfurt about 18 to 24 months ago. It just so happened I sat next to this lovely woman from Sweden. And boy, was she shy. She was so quiet. And so much so that I could tell she was just mortified that she happened to be sitting next to me. So I was just pulling teeth, trying to get her to talk to me. I was like, come on. And as she talked, she told me that she had served as a foster mother for several kids. And I finally looked at her, I said, do you realize like what you've done? Do you realize the life changer you've been for these children that had no place to go and you fostered them? I said, I've watched you tonight be a little bit kind of concerned about yourself. You shouldn't. Like, you're the one that should be on the stage talking to all these people. What you've done is amazing. So I went back to Norway. She was at a meeting. About a year later, she walked up, she said, "Do you remember me?" And I have to be honest, like if you say that to me, I'm not much of a liar, but I'll probably say you look familiar, but you have to remind me a little bit, because I might call you Carlos or Pablo from Mexico, right? So she kind of looked at me, and I could tell, like we had connected, but I was like, "Remind me." And she's like, "Dinner last year, Frankfurt, you talked to me." Now she's coming up to me, and she's saying, "I'm in the game." And she's like, "That conversation changed the way I thought about myself." The next day, or 6 months later, we're at Copenhagen's event. She comes across the stage as a bronze. And when she gave me a big old smooch on the cheek and a hug, it was different, right? She's like, "I'm in." So that night, I shot her a text. I found her upline. I said, "I need to send her a text." So I got her phone number, and I blasted her a text. I said, "That was really special to see you on the stage today." And you know what she said to me? Doggone it, this gets my heart. She said, "I actually believe what you say about me." That's exactly how she said it in the text. She said, "Thank you." She said, "I actually believe what you say about me." And then she said, "And for me, that's a first." We talk about human trafficking. There's a different kind of slavery. I mean, in no way to make light of that side of the reality of the world, but there's a different kind of like trafficking where people get kind of lost in this place. We should be really careful with how we talk to each other. If you see something good in somebody, tell them. Pull them aside and say, "You're really good at this." Because for Pete's sake, there's sure a lot of times when people are saying the opposite. My mom used to read poems and put poems on the fridge. She would give me a quarter if I memorized the poem before her. She's pretty smart, like my dad, right? Because she had the poem down. But she put it on the fridge and then turned it into a competition. She used to always say, "If with pleasure you are viewing the work someone is doing, if you like him or you love him, tell him now." I could tell you the rest of that poem. I probably wouldn't get the quarter. I'd miss some lines. But I think we could do a better job of recognizing the good, the gifts, and the talents in other people and making deposits instead of withdrawals into people. And just give them a coin, give them $1, and say, "You know what? You're really good at talking." I think we should do a little less about maybe the way they look, even though that's a wonderful thing to compliment someone about. But I think we owe it to ourselves to try to find people's real unique gifts that are inside. Like the authenticity and vulnerability of a mouse sword, who's willing to stand up and say, "I've gone from being a rooster to a feather duster." And to me, he's greater than a rooster. He's the top. So conviction and self, I could spend the next 2 hours, no bathroom breaks, and talk about that. But please understand that it's not just you talking to yourself in a mirror or even on a mini trampoline, which I'm grateful and excited about. Trish, I can see you doing it. But it's also you saying to yourself, how frequently do I look someone in the eye and tell them what I see in them? I couldn't believe when she texted and said, "I actually believe what you say about me, and for me, that's a first." Gosh, still gets my heart. Help each other out. Lift each other, okay? Be careful what you say about each other, even when you're not in the presence of someone. Every one of you have gifts and talents, and you want to see your teams grow and flourish. Tell them what they're great at. Don't tell them what they're not good at. Look, the opportunity is real. And if you don't have conviction about that, why don't you sit down and talk to some of these folks that are actually like supporting themselves on a full-time basis or flying around the world on her own dime? And by the way, Trish, when you mentioned yesterday that you made a promise to my dad, and I knew yesterday you weren't feeling great, and I knew that I saw you in Europe 2 weeks ago, I'm thankful that you're up here doing what you're doing. It means a lot. And you inspire a lot of people. You're self-deprecating. You stand up and say, I'm just a housewife, or I'm blonde, right? But let me tell you this right now. I've watched this woman from the time this company was so small, you probably could have handwritten the names involved. And I've watched her with her day timer. I've watched her goals handwritten and keeping it simple. But let me tell you, she is an absolute powerhouse. She's an absolute powerhouse. This opportunity is real. It's a financial opportunity that is very real. It will take work. It will take you up and down a little bit. Be prepared for that. But the economic opportunity is real. And when a person has clarity on what and why, they have a clear sense of conviction around the product, they have a conviction about themselves, and they stop listening to the noise, like my friend in Sweden, who says, I'm starting to actually believe somebody's telling me something about me that I can believe. And the next line, and that's new for me. That's cool for me. Like, that stuff is worth a lot. Marry that with an understanding that there's money to be made here, and smoke needs to go up chimneys, and food needs to go in pantries, and kids need to go to school and to universities, and gas needs to go in cars. So for me, this is not just a big humanitarian deal where money is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. The fact of the matter is, when you get the money, if you do good with it, I want you to have more. My dad always says, if you make money, make memories with it. Do things with your family. I've seen Trish do that. I've seen people do amazing things with resources. I don't believe money is the root of evil. I do not believe that. I believe if it becomes the only thing you focus on, yeah, it's going to eat you up. But I promise you it will come. Have conviction that this is real. And do not let anyone treat you like a commodity. Don't. I'm going to teach you how to do that today. Don't let people look down on you or treat you differently because you're associated with network marketing or with this company or with a product that might be a little bit tricky to say. Don't. Deep, abiding conviction is never on trial. This is not a debate. And I'm going to teach you the secret of how to get over that, because that is a big part of your lack of success, is you feel like you're on trial. Quit it. You're not on trial. And when you get clear on that, you will be liberated. I will liberate you today with what I'm about to show you, how to think about that, okay? Now, if you have this nailed, if you're centered, right, if you're clear, if you take out the distortions and the frustrations and any number of other things that wonk up this top, get rid of them and get clear on what, why, product, self, and opportunity. You're ready to move to this section. Productivity. I'm going to make it real simple. To me, productivity is the combination of two words. It's product and activity. That's it. Product plus activity equals productivity. Okay, it's very simple. All you need to do at this point is engage and be active. Put your 10 pennies in your pocket, do whatever it is. But here's the great secret. I've taught this in many settings. The game has more to do with activity than you think. I'm going to explain why. Most of you are not active enough. Most of you are looking for one big player that's the skeleton key that will open up your future. It doesn't work that way. This is a game of high activity. The winners are the ones who are highly active. And here's the great joy of high activity. When you're highly active, you start to care less. I had a great mentor one time that said to me, care less, but don't be careless. Let me explain. Some of you have heard me share this before. If I love to eat red meat, steak, I like a nice steak, and I have not had steak for 6 months. And my wife says, I'm taking you out for your birthday. We're going to go get a really, really nice meal, and it's going to be steak. How excited am I to have that one dinner that night if for 6 months I haven't had a steak? Sorry to the vegetarians, I like red meat. So what happens is, if you haven't had a steak for a long time, it becomes really valuable to you. I think I can eat it all, but it's too big. So I take a little bit home, and I have steak and eggs for breakfast. Not quite as good as the first meal, but still very good. I come home for lunch, sneak in, got a few minutes, stop in, give Allison a kiss. I say, what's for lunch? Do you want to have some lunch together? Well, there's a little more steak left. Okay. Come home for dinner, the grill's fired up. I got a steak for you. Now what happens is, by about dinner that night, what's happening to my love of steak? Is it higher? Am I waking up looking for steak and eggs the next morning? Does anyone know the technical term for this? It's an economic term. I have a degree in economics. It's a very interesting thing. It's called the law. It's a law of diminishing. It's going down. Marginal, which means each one. Diminishing marginal utility or satisfaction. It means that if I have something several times, the next one I have is less satisfying. It's a law, it's an economic law. And it says that if you keep having the same thing, it actually means less to you the next time. What happens if for 3, 4, 5 days I come home for lunch and it's like roast beef sandwich? And then I go to dinner that night, we're having a roast. And the next morning, it's a different form of steak and eggs. What happens over time is by Friday, you want a bowl of cornflakes. You're like, no more meat, I'm ready, just okay. Now, what if I just take out meat for a minute and I put in face-to-face appointments or discussions or phone calls? If I haven't had a meaningful face-to-face discussion for a long time, do you know what happens? I start to elevate its value to me. And I make it so important to myself that I get all amped up and psyched about it, like it just starts to mess with me. I haven't had a meaningful conversation with anybody about a CF for a long time, and now I've got one coming this Friday. Haven't had a steak for a long time. What's the value of that steak? It's high. And when the value of that discussion point with that person becomes so high, guess what happens? It tips the scale of relative importance to them. Is it just as important to them? No, because I haven't had a conversation for weeks, and now I've got one. So I make that conversation so valuable, it's like my wife saying, we haven't had meat for 6 months, let's go have a steak tonight. And I'm like, I'm not missing this dinner. Like, I'm going. What happens then is the person that happens to be talking to you can sense that they are the steak. And you haven't eaten for a long time. And suddenly your eyes start to look at them a little differently, don't you? You start to talk to them. You start... And nobody wants to be eaten like a steak, much less with a steak knife. Now, is this true? Is this real? This is a law. This is a principle. It's the law of diminishing marginal satisfaction. It just means each one means a little bit less. What happens then if I have 8, 10 discussions in a day, 10 pennies? What happens to that? If I drop one of those discussions, if someone decides to paint me like, are you kidding me? Are you really part of a network marketing company? And I've had steak like you 4, 5, 6, 7 times today, guess what? I'm going to respond to that. Utter and complete emotional dislocation and indifference. And I will teach you the secret. Indifference makes the difference. If you care too much, they will sense it like you're trying to eat them like a steak. You need to stop. I will tell you the great secret of success in all of these endeavors. It is high activity. It is high activity. Because the more active you are, the more steak you eat, the less you care about each steak. And when you care less but aren't careless, when you care less, guess what happens to the relative importance of the discussion? It normalizes. People can sense that you're actually talking to them from a point of conviction, not hunger. And when they sense that you're talking from a point of conviction with a high degree of emotional indifference, you are now on the perfect playing field to win. But if you start amping yourself up and over-jacking yourself about like who this person is and what it is, you're going to lose. I'll give you an example. I used to run a sales team. At one point, I had 17 people on my team. I trained every single one of them. And they got to understand that I was willing to go on what we called joint calls. That meant you call me, I go. I had to deal with my wife, that was the deal. And there were days when I would go on 8, 10, 12, 15 joint calls. I'd get up at 6 in the morning, I was at the office at 7, and my day was jacked and racked the whole day. One guy I hired set up like 8 appointments in a given day. And we went out and we sold a bunch of quality stuff. We sold. My briefcase was stuffed with applications for products. But the last one we went to was this big dentist. He was making a ton of money. This is the way my guy's telling me. This last appointment's the biggest one. This one's a big deal to me. And what am I thinking? I'm dragging my knuckles after appointments all day. I walk into the dentist's office. I swing the door open. I'm like, okay, we're here for an appointment with so-and-so. And to be honest, I was a little tired at that point. I had had steak a lot that day. And this lady walks out and says, oh, you know, the doctor will be right with you. He's just a little tied up. I'm like, no problem. So I sit down in the waiting room and read a 6-month-old magazine. Then she's like, you know what, let's take you back to the break room. And now I'm sitting reading a 9-month-old magazine in front of a half-eaten Subway sandwich. I'm starting to get grumpy. Then this dentist finally walks in 45 minutes late, grabs a chair, swings it around. Somehow that had effect on me, like kind of casual, like swings it around and says, what do you got for me? As if to say, I'm tired too, and I'm not interested really in talking to you. And I literally just closed the book. I said, Doc, look, I just sat for 45 minutes in the front area here reading 4-month-old magazines you need to renew. And then, you know, sitting here with all due respect, right? This isn't about like what I got for you. I'm not selling vacuums here. And I said, so this probably isn't going to work. And the new guy I hired, right? He's over here blank white, like, what are you doing? Are you kidding me? I said, the question is this. And I asked like 6 questions. I said, if you can answer these questions, I'm wasting my time and yours. And then he said, you know what he said to me? Because why? Because indifference makes the difference. I didn't say lack of respect. I said indifference. He looked at me and goes, you know what? You're right. And the answer is I can't answer those 6 questions. I probably need some help. Now, we ended up taking applications, which I rarely did on a first appointment, for about $20,000 worth of commission to this brand new college recruit. We're walking out to the car. I'm dragging my knuckles. I got applications sticking out of the bag, and this is not a game for me. These are real products. I told you the story yesterday about how I felt about them. And this guy looks at me, he goes, how did you just do that? And I looked at him and I said, don't you ever let someone treat you like a commodity. Don't. Stand up and walk out of a meeting if someone's going to act like your time is less valuable than theirs. Give me a break. Some of you come up and say, what should I do and say to my sister? I can't get her to do this. Leave your sister alone. Leave her alone. Quit trying to change everybody's eye color. Now you say, well, what if she needs it? I'm not saying you should leave her alone in some sort of disconnected, unfair way. I'm simply saying to you, quit trying to convince. Quit trying to change people's eye color. It's blue, you can't change it. Speak from a point of conviction and move, move, move. Go to the next one. Speak from a point of conviction, have clear activity goals for the week, and move, hit them. Hit your activity goals. And the faster you move and the more convicted you speak, people will react and respond in a very unique way. And the less interested you are in trying to persuade or convince them in any way, the more interested they will become. And you can't fake it. If you have 1 appointment for the day and you try to head fake me thinking that's how it's going to work, it won't work. If you have 8 appointments for the day and you're moving And I'm talking about invitations. I don't care how you do it. ABC, any number of ways. My point is high activity is the game. And when the game goes up into high activity, your sense of concern for every interaction goes down to its natural state. You begin to become a professional. People can sense and smell it on you. Like, this is a professional. She's really good at what she does. And you're not asking someone's opinion, and you're not kind of cringing as you approach them with this kind of shoulda, coulda, woulda stuff, the weasel words. Don't. Stand up and say, I've come across something that's probably as unique a discovery as penicillin was. Not really interested if you believe that. But if you have some interest in talking to me about it, I'd love to share it with you. Or ask questions. When product and activity are married with high activity, now you're going to get productive. Put the product into lots of people's hands, be prepared to it. Oh, and by the way, invest in the game. Invest in your business. You can't leave a room you were never in. Get in. Invest in the business. If you're serious about this, you want to make a difference, nothing will make you move faster than knowing you've got product that you can share with people. So get product and get active. Don't watch people walk across the stage, kind of clapping in the back, having this narrative in your head that, like, I'd love to do that. Do it. Invest in the business. You can do it. But remember, people can sense and feel when your activity levels are low, and this means more to you than it does to them. And when you create that imbalance, you have actually disadvantaged yourself materially. If you'll stay highly active, you'll normalize the playing field, and now you speak truth, you campaign from conviction, and you move. You're genuinely concerned and interested in people. I love being interested in people. I love that. But I'm also not going to let them hijack my sense of conviction and confidence because they start looking down their nose at me. I'm sorry. I can take hers or his or any number of these people's tax return, and I can lay it next to them and say, would you like to look at these? These are real. Should we have a chat about what's real? Don't let people treat you as less than. Are you with me? You okay? Am I being too hard on you? A quick word on the side. I just looked down and realized I'm going to blow your whole time thing, so I'm going to speed up. I used to simply say this. This was my view of the pond. I can't say this was many years ago when we started this. I looked at it as a little simple formula on the side. For me, it was simple. It was a market plus a message times activity. Could also say a tool. Market could be anything. Athletes, could be age-driven, demographic-driven. I didn't care, but I just thought, figure out where you want to play. Some of you have backgrounds in various areas or disciplines. Some of you don't. I don't really care. Pick a market, have a message, be active. So M plus M is market plus a message times what? Times activity. What does that equal? Money. Market, message, money. Your message could be a tool. That's great. Get a market, get a message or a tool, go out and be active. Keep it really simple. Someone expects more of you because you're in this technical field of a biotech product, forget it. Just say it works. And I don't have a lot of time. I respect you, but I don't have a lot of time. I'm on a mission, man. I'm a pinball, and I'm banging around everything, and I want to talk to as many people as I can. Market plus a message times activity equals money. Just go. Share this. Now, I would submit to you it's pivotal that you set very small, very emotionally doable goals on a daily and weekly basis. I wouldn't even look past day and week. What are you going to do a day? For me, it was set 2 openers every day, 10 a week. That was it. I had a few other activity points that I gave to myself. If I got a referral from someone, I gave myself a point. If I had a face-to-face meeting with someone, I gave myself a point. And I tried to do 2 things every day. 5 points, set 2 openers every day. And by the way, I did it. Just for the record, Trish, I would not have succeeded in my prior life had I not. It was simple, consistent, dynamic, right? So I did it every day, I did it every week. Did I miss some days? Sure. Did I miss some weeks? Sure, rarely. But I had the #1 team in a 160-year-old company in 18 to 24 months. All my people could eat raw meat, they were young, and all I told them was those 2 things. 5, we called them efficiency points. 5 points a day, you have them done by 10 a.m., I don't care what you do. Set 2 openers. 5 points a day, 2 openers. 25 points a week, 10 openers a week on a 5-day work week. You want to go golfing on Friday? I don't care, just do the work. So set activity targets, be active, and then I want you to think about it this way. Add passion to this. Passionate productivity is my favorite thing. Passionate in the sense of willing to suffer, but also willing to enjoy it. And then if you get stuck on that elbow, I like to ask the question, well, what do you need to believe? Because if someone's not productive, but they're really honest about their what and why, then I go back and say, what do you need to believe? I was working with a world-class consulting firm, and I was stuck on their recommendation. And my whole leadership team around the table, multi-billion-dollar company, was saying this is the right thing, and I was stuck. And the really smart consultant looked at me and said, Tyler, what do you need to believe? Like, tell me what you're stuck on. What do you need to believe to move? Very intelligent question. So if somebody's not acting, they're not highly active, but you feel like they have a clear what and why, then I just say, what do you need to believe? What's keeping you from doing this? They may say, I don't believe I can do it. I don't know how to say it. Okay, that's a good point. I can work on that. If I've got someone with clarity and conviction who's passionately productive, that means high activity, indifference making the difference, out there every week doing the activity things, not worrying about the result, it'll come, staying in the game. I want to check in on results. That reads results assessment once a week. So let's say you want to get 5 leaders around you that you're going to work with like this. You should set clear daily and weekly targets for them, and you should check in with them. Have them blast you a note or a text at the end of the day, and check in on a PEP session, performance evaluation and planning, once a week. And sit down and say, how was your week? Can be over a phone, can be over a Zoom call, doesn't matter. I'm way, way, way behind on time, so I'm going to jam because this is yours. I'm not going to eat your time. But I will say this, on the results assessment, there's really only 2 reasons people don't hit the result. It's will or skill. They may not entirely know what to do. That's a skill issue for me. So if I saw high activity, but I wasn't seeing results, I loved working with that. I love working with somebody who would put the time and energy in, but was struggling on the result, because to me that's fine tuning. I could work with that person. But the person who was standing up saying they wanted to be on the stage and be recognized, but then was coming in with like 2 points for the week and set 2 openers, I'd say, it doesn't work, time out. I gotta go back to the top. I can't coach somebody that doesn't know what they want. So I needed that to change. Now, if you had a skill issue, then develop the skills with them. And by the way, I'm not talking about hand-holding for hours at a time. I'm talking about do it with them, joint activity. That was my game. I would do 25, 30, 40 appointments a week. Could be 3-way calls, could be anything else, but show them how you do it. Share with them. And if you don't know, don't game it. Reach up above you, because there's people who know. What an amazing structure this is. People have the skills. You can learn them. Skills can be developed. Whether it's prospecting, follow-up, supporting people in the game, it doesn't matter. And if you're struggling, write this down really quickly. I'm trying really hard not to burn your time. Write down IDOCO. IDOCO. It's an acronym. I is inform or instruct. D is to demonstrate. O is to observe. C is to critique, and O is to observe again. I'll read it again. I is to inform or instruct. D is to demonstrate it. O is to observe them doing it. C is to give feedback or critique. And then O is to observe it again. Some of you have heard me tell the story. I have a hard time with my kids at my home not knowing how to clean or work. I come from Norton. It's a problem. It's genetic, and it passes generationally. On Saturday at my house, nobody left the house till noon. We worked our tails off. My dad would have me scrub the garage floor for no good reason at all, and I'd move all the food storage bottles over from one side to the other. And then next week I'd move them back. It didn't matter. And here's the deal. I can't stand when my kids don't know how to work, so I use IDOCO. Simple example, how to clean a countertop off. Let me help you understand, kids. You'll have a job the rest of your life if you can learn how to at least wipe a counter off. It's at a certain level, but that doesn't matter to me. And I go to restaurants on a daily basis that somebody doesn't know how to wipe off a countertop. They grab 2 menus, they grab a nasty rag out of a bucket of some sort, they squeeze it, it's all dark water. They walk over to my table and they push the food around into random positions. They reposition the shrapnel that's on the table. They give me a glass of water, throw a menu, and say, someone will be right with you. And I look at this table and go, someone is paying for this incredible service. So I teach my kids. I go, look, attack this. I inform, I instruct it, then I demonstrate. I line them up on my countertop. I squirt ketchup and food and salt and pepper all over the countertop. My wife is laughing at me, and I demonstrate. I'm on D of ID. I've informed him. I'm now demonstrating. Are you watching me? I say to them. They're like, Dad, come on. I go, no, eye contact right here. I start cleaning the countertop, bulldozing for my 4-year-old. We're bulldozing, right? We're moving this stuff with us. We're not going to the end and knocking it off. We're moving with it, right? My 4-year-old's excited. My 16-year-old thinks I'm an absolute insane man. My wife is giggling at the typing on her computer. What happens next? They say the countertop's clean. Dad, thanks so much. We got it. They're walking off. I go, up, time out. Step back here to the countertop, please. I will now observe. Ketchup. Everything's on the thing again. Salt, pepper, a little bit of honey, which takes a little bit more elbow work. And I go, you're up, Mr. 16-year-old Jacob. You're on. I'm now observing. He's going, he's got now 5 other critiques because I have a tribe of kids. They're all ripping on each other, saying, you're doing it wrong, you're not doing it. My 4-year-old saying, you're not bulldozing, you're pushing it off the edge. Right? I'm watching all of this, I stop. I say, okay, family, let's critique Jacob. How did he do? Everyone's giving him a rip, and I say, stop, you're next. I do a section of the countertop for them. What's my point? I'm observing and we're allowing for critique. When we finish the second iteration, I remind you this ends with an O. They're saying, thanks, Dad, that was amazing. My wife's like, finally, this is over, which is what this is telling me right now, is this is over. And I say, let's do it again. And 2 or 3 days later, after my kids have been abused because I asked them to clean a countertop that they made dirty, I have a friend over for dinner. And I say, hey guys, while we visit, do you mind starting on the kitchen? And all of my kids stand up. And they start moving to the countertop. And my friend looks at me and goes, are you kidding me? Like, what is going on here? Look at these kids. And I got a 4-year-old going. He's getting down low. He's looking for honey shrapnel. He's going over to the counter, getting a hot rag that's actually clean. He's coming back. This guy's like, this is insane. What are you doing to these kids? I'm developing skills that are clearly not in the workplace in most restaurants, right? You owe it to inform, demonstrate, observe, critique, observe to the people you're helping. You don't have to make it so formal that it blows their minds. Just show them what you do. Share with them what you say. Observe them do it. Take a minute, start with positives, not negatives. Give them a little bit of feedback, and then watch them do it again. And mark my words, if you did that on one thing a week with your big 5 that you want to work with, watch what happens. They'll start cleaning the countertops for you. And they'll say, you know what, they know what they're doing. They're doing pretty good. Does it make sense? Okay, you're still with me? I'm over time, so I'm in a jam. Last piece for me, I'm going to flesh this whole thing out, and then I'll finish. What happens when my friend leaves the house and my kids are there and I pull them together and I go, did you hear what Bart said about your ability to clean a countertop? You were phenomenal. I'm high-fiving my kids. My 4-year-old's like, yes, I did it right. When you win, you recognize people. You tell them they did it. They did it so well. And when you tell them they did it, guess what happens to the top box? They start to believe in themselves more, and they start to think this actually works. So the winning, the recognition, the reward that comes around the bend of skill development, what does it become? If you spin a basketball on your finger, I'm very good at it, by the way. I could do my thumbs, my knuckles, because I'm not very good at basketball. I'm good at spinning a basketball. It's always been a problem for me. I could spin it right here in front of you. I could spin it, hold it here, move it on my fingers. But once it starts to slow down, what do? I start tapping it. This box on the left is a tap. It keeps them spinning, excited, moving forward. If I've come around the bend, how many of you stood on the stage and walked off going, right on, that felt good. I actually did it. I reached a level here. Guess what that means? Your conviction and clarity at the top are starting to climb. When conviction and clarity start to climb at the top, what happens to passionate productivity? It goes up. If your activity stays high with a whole new level of conviction, get out of the way. Get out of the way, because when people start believing, it starts to go. What happens at the end of the week? They say, I got it done this week, Mal. I'm doing great. And you go, awesome. What do you need help with? Maybe 1 or 2 skills. Let's IDOCO the countertop again. How can I help you with this? Boom, they're onto it. And you better recognize. You better pull them aside and say, excellent week, phenomenal effort. You did it. Cheapest thing you can give to somebody, and it's the fuel. Can you tell I'm speeding up here? You good? Everybody okay? Welcome back. You okay? Okay, good. Last thing. Leverage tools and resources into the 4 boxes. If you watch the ABC presentation from Larry, I don't know if he's in the back anymore, and that's a tool you can lever, thanks Larry, it's in the middle. How can that tool help me to increase clarity, conviction, increased high activity, drive skill development, and win and recognize high impact, reward, money, time, freedom, and call it out? Whatever tools you can use, videos, meetings. I could sit here for the next hour. We could list every leverageable resource that you could use to do this pinwheel. Use the tools and resources around you to improve conviction and clarity, drive productivity, increase skill development, and recognize people. Recognize them. That's the winning side. Look, I've done this for a long time. People come up and say, oh, you're a great speaker. If you knew how many times I've spoken in front of groups, you wouldn't believe it. You would not believe it, well before a CEO. But I'm more dangerous at teaching people how to do high activity commission sales. It's what I've done my whole life. What I'm teaching you is true. If you will get clear on what you want and why you want it, if you will get conviction on the product, the opportunity, and yourself in the industry, and get an activity set for just 1 week. Don't be a hero for me, 1 week. What are you gonna do going home, tomorrow's Monday, figure out Monday to Friday or Saturday, call Sepp and Jeska and say, this is what I wanna do this week, this is what I wanna track. Perfect, write it down, talk with them at the end of the week, that's the red elbow. They say, I hit it, you high five them, nonstop, through the phone, right? You're loving it. They say, I struggled a little bit this week, is it skill or will? What can I help you with? The activity set for next week is set out. Maybe I'm going to do a couple calls with you. Your job is to be highly active. Can you smile? Can you walk out of here and smile? There's wonderful people walking around out here. Just go out and smile at people. Talk to them. Ask them questions. Be highly active and quit worrying what they think. If you're having steak every day, you don't care if the steak falls on the ground and the dog gets to it and you're like, oh, darn it. What I mean is those are people, I know, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to teach you the principle. Quit beating yourself up and trying to change people's eye color. Just get highly active and let it go. Speak to them from a point of conviction and move and enjoy it. Liberate yourself from it. You're gonna find people like these beautiful people I asked to stand. And they're gonna look at you and they were hugging over there. Is that something to be feared? It doesn't matter that they were like, okay, I'm a hairstylist doing a great job, I'm sure. I would come to you, I really would. Helping this beautiful couple, and this amazing thing happens because what? She opens her mouth. What are you worried about? If somebody's gonna judge you or put you on trial, walk out, move. If it's your sister, if it's your mother, if it's your brother, do it respectfully and say, listen, I'm not gonna try to persuade you on this deal. If this was me, I would use it. But I'm not trying to change the world necessarily just with you. I'm gonna move and talk to a lot of people. I want you to try it. That's it, move. They'll come back to you. And if I had more time, I could tell you several of those stories. Listen, I'm breaking a sweat up here in a suit coat, no tie, and I'm losing my voice because I believe what I'm teaching you. I've done it. I know how to do this, and I know how to coach other people to do it. You can do this. You can do it. Take a pic of this map. I'll shoot this over to the folks in Australia as a PDF. You guys can see it, pin it on the wall, and you are here yourself and find where you are, okay? If you need help with things, reach to people, talk through it. It's not rocket science, but it's a true set of cause and effect principles. I've used it for a long time. My dad and I are humbled and grateful for your engagement and involvement in this. I am so humbled by the Australian leadership that's doing events like this, that have vision, that understand what they're trying to accomplish as a team. And even though they work in different lines, they're coming together to do amazing things here. And I think that's evidence of our ethos. It's incredibly commendable. I appreciate the chance to be with you at 5 a.m. I'm leaving your beautiful country with a really, really soft heart. Really, really soft heart for what you guys are doing, the impact you're having, and the joy it brings to me to be able to see it. And I thank you for letting me be part of this today.